I have waited tables for the last 3 years. During my shift last night, a group of 4 women in their late 20s came in. They were a pleasure to have as customers. They ordered 4 of our house cocktails to start with and then went over the menu for their entrees. Then I was on my way back to their booth with the drinks on a tray. I walked by the back side and overheard one of them talking about how she was 14 weeks along. When I rounded back, they were talking about the same topic and it was clear to me that she was pregnant. I figured her having 1 drink wasn't a big deal. They ordered their entrees and I went off to handle other tables. About 5 minutes later, they called me over again and asked for another round. At this point I started getting concerned, but I took the order and cheerfully said I'd be right back. This time, I went to the bartender and asked him to make one of them a virgin cocktail. He was confused, but since he's a good friend of mine, I told him to just trust me. A few cocktails later, hers strictly virgin, they started getting rowdy, and Mrs. Pregnant Woman was also getting into it. I figured that since she didn't notice, things were okay. The problem came when I took them their check, and they asked to split the bill at the register. When Mrs. Pregnant Woman got to the counter, I saw her cocktails were marked with virgin. My bartender had edited each in the system for inventory. It was too late for me to edit them back, so I just had her pay, hoping that she wouldn't look at the receipt. They all thanked me and left, leaving a generous tip in the process. They were talking in the parking lot for the next short while, presumably waiting for an Uber. Several minutes later Mrs. Pregnant Woman came back and asked what virgin on the receipt meant. I fessed up that it meant non-alcoholic. She blank stared me for a few seconds and then asked if she had ordered a non-alcoholic cocktail. I said no, but told her that I assumed she wanted one seeing as she was pregnant. It was a lame lie and I'll admit it, but she looked me in the eye and asked me to return her part of the tip. I did so. Then she talked to my manager. My manager took me into her office and literally shrieked at me until hoarse. I stood my ground and told her that I'm not going to be responsible for FAS. She told me that she was taking me off the calendar until she decided what to do with me. She also informed me that I could get the restaurant in serious trouble for discrimination. And upon examination of my state's laws, she is correct. But when I talked to my mother and father about it tonight, they told me that they understood my position. The entire staff at the restaurant is against me and I think that I'm going to call in and tell my manager that I quit. But I still feel in the right here. X and I had way too young. We're friendly co-parents. One big rule we share is if our daughter breaks something, she pays for it. Now, sis and I are the only grandkids. Aunt never married. Instead, she worked with GMA and GPA at their Seams Tri-store, and took it over when they retired. Sis's girlfriend proposed last year. GPA offered to make FSIL a custom suit, which she was over the moon about. GMA had me ask Sis what her dream dress was and record the convo. Sis, thinking it was just between us, told me in great detail what her dream dress was, though said it was way too expensive. So she would get something much cheaper. Well, a few months later GMA surprised Sis with her dream wedding dress. It FOT perfectly and everyone cried. Sadly, GMA recently passed away, which hit us all hard. Sis was devastated, but decided that the dress meant GMA would still be there with us at the wedding. The issue comes in with C. She's very large, much larger than Sis. 3 days ago, we decided to go visit Sis and see how she was doing. It was great, but then C asked if she could try on the dress. Sis politely said no. C made a face, but dropped it. Later, we decided to go grab dinner. Sis and I went to pick up our orders, but C decided to stay and play with Sis's dog. We got back, and the dress was destroyed. C had apparently tried to get it on, popping some seams, and got stuck. Instead of waiting for help, she cut her way out. The dress was hacked to bits. Sis was devastated and asked us to leave. I grounded C and called Aunt with some pictures, asking if it could be saved. She said there was no. She said she'd make a new one, but it wasn't the same. Then she dropped the bomb on me. GMA had hand-sewed most of the dress, used super expensive fabric, and put almost 500 hours in making that dress. Since it was the only family wedding we'd have. In total, the dress cost $12,000, give or take. C has about 15,000 saved from various jobs, as well as winning writing competitions. This was supposed to help her in college. I took her to the bank and set in motion transferring all the funds, since as her parent I still have control over it. $12,000 to aunt to pay for the new dress. $3,000 to my sister's wedding, as an emotional distress tax. I explained exactly why this was happening to C, but she sobbed the entire time, asking what was she supposed to do for college and saying it wasn't her fault. I told her she could get a job if she didn't get a scholarship. And it was her fault for trying on the dress after she'd been told no, and for not waiting until we got back. A few popped seams could have been fixed. Hacking the dress to pieces couldn't. C told my ex, and while she agreed C was in the wrong after the full story, said I shouldn't have ruined her future for a free dress. I reminded her of our rule, and she still thinks I'm wrong. $3,000, that was to make up to my sister that C destroyed the last gift our dead grandma ever gave her. I consider that part of the price of destroying the dress, since even if Aunt remakes it, it's lost a great deal of its sentiment value. I pointed out how young we has her because I wanted to explain how a 31-year-old has a 16-year-old kid. I do not resent having her, she's the best thing I've ever done. I also brought up C's size because Sis has Crohn's disease and thus is very tiny. The dress was made her for size, and C is much larger than Sis. I love C as she is, but just holding the dress up, it was clear it wouldn't fit. The money was C's have fun at college money, not her college fund. My ex and I are paying for whatever scholarships don't. When she was asking what she would do for college, she was asking what did she do for fun and to buy things we didn't pay for. I got off the phone with my ex. I sent her the pictures, and she freaked. She apparently didn't believe me when I said it had been hacked apart, and believed it was just a few torn seams. She was pretty much on my side after. She told me that she spent the day badgering our daughter, asking her why she did what she did. And finally she cracked and said she was mad that grandma wasn't alive to make her a dress, and that it was unfair. My sister got a free beautiful dress as a reminder when my daughter got nothing, despite the many things she was given after the funeral. She tried it on, took it off when the seams popped, and then in anger hacked it apart. If she couldn't have a dress from grandma, no one could. Her own words. Honestly, knowing she did it on purpose has just made things worse. The fact that she could be so. I have always been civil with my half-brother. We were close as kids, but he started to have an attitude at 13 and pretty much stopped being nice, and started messing with my things / making fun of me and doing pranks to annoy me / privacy, was gone with him coming into my room and taking my things. Whenever I complained, my stepmom would normalize his behavior and make excuses. My dad never really grounded him and thought that talking to him will get him to behave better. I'm currently in college. I live in a rented apartment and have car to help me get to the university or other places. The car isn't expensive or fancy at all. I saved up for it 2 years ago. I decided to have Christmas dinner with my family. It's the perfect opportunity to be with family since I haven't seen my dad in a while. I arrived at my dad's house and left my purse and my keys on the kitchen island after my stepmom told me to help with dinner. My half-brother started talking about my car in the kitchen while my stepmom was listening and asked if he could take it for a couple of hours to hang out with friends. I politely told him no. He threw a fit and brought up how I needed to relax and not worry, but my answer was still the same. While we were sitting at the dinner table, my half-brother got up, washed his hands, and I thought he went outside. I got busy talking to my dad, and after I got up to wash my hands, I noticed my car keys weren't there. I went outside to ask him, and neither he nor my car were there. I lost it. I started calling his phone, but he hung up on me several times. I was furious. I told my dad I'd call the police if he didn't come back with the car. My stepmom jumped to defend him and said I was being unreasonable to call the police. I called him one last time, then I called the police. My stepmom freaked out when my half-brother got picked up by the police. She told me to go explain the situation to the authorities, otherwise he'd spend the night in jail. But I refused, especially since I still hadn't got my car back. Stepmom yelled that I ruined dinner and that it was no big deal. He was going to return it after borrowing it from me, but he didn't really borrow it, and she heard me say no. I don't know what she told the police, but I didn't give permission to use the car. My stepmom's side of family are mad at me for doing this to my brother and hinted that I don't consider him family. My dad's side of family sided with me, saying he deserved it. My dad said I overreacted and I shouldn't have called the police when he disappeared for 4 hours. I talked to the police about what happened, and I learned later that my stepmom said that her son was allowed to borrow it, and that it was a misunderstanding. I wasn't going to let her continue to lie, but my dad told me to back off and let it go. This really upset me. My half-brother wasn't even berated the way I was by the family. My sister is severely autistic. She requires attention almost 24/7 and cannot be left alone. She is nonverbal and cannot take care of herself at all. Despite the fact that she is only 12, she is extremely destructive and violent and destroys anything she gets her hands on. I hate her. That should be wrong to say, but it doesn't feel like it. I was only 6 years old when she was born, and since then I've never solely had my parents' attention. Even since I can remember, the world has revolved around her. I was moved out of my room into the basement at 7 because she needed to be in the room next to my parents. All of my toys as a child were destroyed by her, and my parents simply ignored me when I complained. Even when I was 14 and she destroyed a Mac my school gave me, I was in the wrong. Along with this, I am expected to take care of her and drop everything I do for her. I can never make plans with friend because my parents expect me to be there if they need me to take care of her. Even when I do somehow get time to myself, I am required to leave if they need me. If I do not, then I am punished. The recent example of this is when I went to see the new Spider-Man movie and was grounded because I turned my phone off in the theater. It seems as if I am nothing more than a slave to them, and anything involving her simply overshadows me. This last week I was chosen to give a speech at a school event. I was so excited, and my parents promised to be there, but they never showed and claimed it was because of my sister. Anytime anything like this happens for me, they are too busy with her. I've held this in for so long, and it finally spilled out today. While talking about colleges with my father, he joked that I should get a degree that pays well so when they're gone I can take care of my sister. I don't know why, but this caused me to break down. I cried and screamed about how it's always about her. I'm nothing more than a caretaker to them, that they always make it about her, and that I'm expected to be her slave for the rest of my life. I've locked myself in my room since then, and my parents have not come to check on me. It's not her fault that she was born the way she is. My parents came to talk to me a while after my breakdown, but I was unable to bring myself to talk to them and only cried and asked them to leave. They have made arrangements with my grandfather for me to stay with him for the time being, and am getting ready to go to his house. My parents want to talk to me, but we have decided it's best I leave for now to have some space and time to collect myself. We will be sitting down and talking later this week about this issue.